Right now, it's a real tragedy here in Los Angeles. We have the Palisades fire going on, as well as the Eaton fire, and many homes and lives have been lost, and it's just terrible. It's just sheer devastation. And some of the things that happen when there's a fire like this is the power goes out, either because it's been shut off or it just goes out because the power lines have fallen off the poles that they were suspended on because the poles were burned. And also communication gets lost when the power goes out, either because the power went out or other reasons. In any case, when there's a loss of power, there's a lot of things that we just can't do anymore. And so one of those things is to be able to communicate. Like your cell phone may not work, and cell phone these days is pretty much the only way, the only device or method we use nowadays to communicate. There's no more landlines really that are being used, and it's pretty much cell phone. If that should go down, how can we communicate? Well, I want to take this moment to kind of talk about this. This is a radio. This is inexpensive Chinese make. It's called, I believe correct pronunciation is Baofeng, but it's spelled Baofeng. Anyways, Baofeng, you could call it, some people call it the Feng or whatever. And I believe it's like, you could get these for as low as like under $10. Usually it's like 30, 35. And this is really a really capable device. This gets many channels. I mean, the frequency range is quite high. If you know anything about radios, I'm sure you know what this is. A lot of ham radio operators have this because it's so cheap. It's it makes it so accessible, and it can be used also as like a walkie-talkie. It's not quite legal here in the States to use it on those frequencies, but you can unlock this, so to speak, so that it can be used on the radio or the walkie-talkie frequencies. So I just suggest everybody get something like this. And just to let you know, there's like walkie-talkie, like the toy that you can get. You can go to like Big Five or any sporting goods store or any big box store. Basically, they'll have these little things, but the range is quite limited. And the kind that you'll find in those big box stores is under the classification of FRS, Family Radio Service. And those are quite limited. They're very low power. They're fun for kids, you know, and if you go camping and you just want to stay in touch with your kids or whatever, when someone's at camp and someone's going to go fishing or whatever, you can use it for very, you know, like limited distance communication. A step up from that is GMRS, General Radio Mobile Service, and that has, those radios have a little more power, but you have to have a license. You have to pay $35, go on the FCC website, register. There's no test or anything. You just sign up, pay the fee, and then within a day or two you'll get an email saying here's your license, and you can download the PDF and print it out if you like. FRS, you don't need any license. You could just go buy it and start using it because it's so low powered. And because it's so low powered, the range is pretty limited. At the very top, well, above GMRS is ham radio. So this is capable of ham and GMRS, and I believe FRS as well. So ham radio, you do have to have a license. You have to take a test. You have to study for it. It's not easy. It's not like anyone can just take a test like a firearms safety certificate. It's not that common sense. You had to have studied it and know some principles about electronics and like frequencies and things like that. And you have to, you have to prepare. You can't just walk in there and take the test and pass. And so with that though, you can transmit to like across the world, basically, even listen to space stations or astronauts flying around, hovering over the Earth. I should talk about the limitations of these radios. So no matter how much power you might get a radio, so these radios come in different power frequencies, or power ratings, I should say. And obviously, the higher the power, the more you're going to pay for it. But even the most powerful handheld radio is going to be limited to like your surroundings. So radio waves, they bounce off things and they travel that way. So if you're in like a city with a lot of buildings, it could help in that it could bounce off the buildings, or also hinder it too, because you kind of have to be in line of sight where, you know, if the less obstructions there are between two receivers, or a transmitter and receiver, the better the signal will travel. So if you're way out in the open and it's just completely flat, then you're going to get pretty good reception. Or if you're on top of a mountain, you'll probably get better reception. The more things there are in between, you know, the more likely it's going to hinder the reception. Just like your Wi-Fi system in your house. Like if you live in a multi-story building and you have like a router in one area, maybe there's a dead spot up, you know, on another floor way up in the corner or something. It's kind of like that. So ham radio, you don't really need it. You don't need to go that far, but GMRS is accessible for anybody. Again, as I mentioned, you don't need to take a test. You just sign up for the license and pay the fee and get the license. And then you can get a pretty capable radio that you can communicate with family or friends, or in an emergency situation, just kind of broadcast a signal and call out there, you know, like you might have seen in the movies, like Mayday, Mayday, you know, is anybody out there? Can somebody help me? We need help, SOS, or things like that. So I think everybody should get something like this. I'm not a prepper or like a survivalist, but I do think that we should all take some precautions, have some preparedness in mind, and communications is one of them. And, you know, hopefully we won't really need it, but every time there's some kind of catastrophe, some natural disaster, and the power goes out, that's when we lose communication. And if the cell phone goes down, which is the primary and perhaps the only way we communicate, if that goes down, you're just, you know, SOL. So having this, at least you have some way of getting in touch. So this works on radio waves, as you may know, and this just transmits freely over the waves, the airwaves. This does not need some kind of system like cell tower system to relay a signal. I mean, there are repeater systems out there, but you don't need them. You can just transmit directly from this device and receive directly to this device. So you can do kind of peer-to-peer communications with this. You don't need to depend on a built system to communicate with. So just a little preparedness, a little bit of money, $35 for the license, $30 for one. You probably should get at least two, right? So about $100 maybe for two plus the license. The other thing I should mention is even ham radio, you can broadcast on those frequencies without a license in emergency situations only. So in normal, everyday life, you need to have a license to broadcast on ham radio frequencies. But if it's an emergency, you know, obviously they're not going to come down on you because it's an emergency, and you can broadcast on those signals for help. And so you could just get the GMRS radio and just use it when you have an emergency without the license. So just buy the GMRS radios and keep it in your go bag, and you'll be that much more prepared.